So Michael Popok, Legal AF, the Second Amendment and the First Amendment are about to come into a collision, unfortunately, in front of the Republican National Convention site in Fiserv Center in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, because Milwaukee, Wisconsin, and Wisconsin as a state allows for both open carry of weapons and concealed carry of weapons, all now completely blessed under the Second Amendment individual right decision 2 years ago, written by Clarence Thomas, which is Bruen versus New York Rifle. Under Bruen versus New York Rifle, the Supreme Court once and for all wrote out the introductory language of the Second Amendment that allows for only armed individual right if it's related to a well-regulated militia. Gone. Now, unless there is a expressed historical twin in law from the 1790s or the 1800s about a gun regulation, no gun regulation will survive. Wisconsin, where, by the way, Trump won by 1 point in the last election, has a very liberal open carry, meaning you can carry a gun on your hip or across your shoulder of really any type of legal firearm, even an AR-15 or an AK-47, that's okay in Wisconsin as long as you follow their rules and regulations. And now you have the First Amendment and the Second Amendment colliding. And I'm going to be watching closely to see what happens and how this is going to be policed by the Milwaukee Police Department. Directly across the street from the Republican National Committee convention site or convention site is Père Marquette Park. Père Marquette Park. It is the First Amendment zone. It is where the protesters will be. Now, look, there's a band of protesters. Maybe they'll be armed. Maybe they won't be. Who threaten to protest outside of this pendant area that's been secured by the Secret Service in collaboration with local police officials and law enforcement officials. So there's going to be a lot of strain and stress on the Milwaukee Police Department, which has had its problems in one of the murder capitals, unfortunately, of the United States, and where just this past week, police officers in Milwaukee shot and killed people during a attempted arrest, including, in addition to that, an unborn child died. So this is not a place that has a great track record for keeping First Amendment and Second Amendment rights separated. Let's just put it that way. And so you've got this collision, a collision that not only could have been avoided had the United States Supreme Court and the Clarence Thomas Penn decision not given almost an unfettered right to have a gun unless you can find a 1790 or 1820s a twin law on the books. Because our predecessors and the dead hand of our predecessors is apparently regulating modern warfare today, right? And the types of weapons that people can have. Even though the life was different, women were treated second-class citizens, if citizens at all, with no right to vote and treated like the property of their husbands because Black Americans were barely citizens and had no real rights at all. But that's okay as long as the guns the gun rights were recognized. And so you got the Second Amendment right of people to walk around with bullets across their chest and guns on their hip, coming into a collision here at Père Marquette Park in Milwaukee. Now, this freaked out the MAGA. The MAGA said, whoa, wait a minute. The protest park is directly across the street and people walking around with guns? No, that doesn't make us feel comfortable. Why don't we move them a mile away over the Milwaukee River to another park? You know, there's a nice park over there. Red Arrow Park is nice, and there's some other parks, and it's far enough away that we don't have to worry about this First Amendment, Second Amendment collision. And the Secret Service said, look, and local officials, look, people have a First Amendment right. It's a fundamental right to protest, especially during political conventions. And yes, they're mindful of the fact that some guy just self-immolated, set himself on fire in the park, and I was in that park, not at that day. I was there 2 days earlier. While the park that's behind or in front of the courthouse in New York where Donald Trump was tried. So crazy people, unhinged people, or just people like, Kyle Rittenhouse, who literally charged into a Black Lives Matter protest with a gun looking to shoot somebody and did, 2 people, including killing one of them. There's more Kyle Rittenhouses out there than you can shake a stick at, or the business end of a rifle. And so that's my fear, is that all these MAGA yahoos who you see in these conventions wearing all sorts of crazy pro-Trump, anti-Biden things with no respect for law, no respect for the Constitution, no respect for the social contract, are now armed. As a full-time lawyer and podcaster, it seems everywhere I go, the coffee's terrible. And when I'm going to court or even just going somewhere in my neighborhood, it's hard to find a good cup of joe. I've tried bringing portable coffee makers with me, but they either taste like crap or they don't travel well. The only coffee maker that makes great travel coffee is AeroPress. And now they've introduced a complete travel system. Their newest innovation, the AeroPress Go Plus, is the first product that makes great tasting coffee using a brewing system that was designed for life on the go. It's a travel coffee revelation. AeroPress Go Plus is a complete travel coffee solution. It's a coffee brewing system that makes the world famous AeroPress brew using a customized tumbler you can drink from and store your coffee maker in when you're storing or traveling with it. All the other travel coffee makers out there either make bad coffee or don't travel well, and none of them allow you to make coffee directly into a tumbler that you can pack your coffee maker right back into before you go. The AeroPress Go Plus finally allows me to have great coffee while I'm doing A, going to B. And it does it all in like 2 minutes. It's the first time I feel I can have great coffee wherever I go, no matter what I'm doing. AeroPress combines the best qualities of a few coffee brewing methods into one cup. A little French press, a little pour over, and a little espresso, all in one cup. It's the best cup of classic coffee you'll ever drink. And we've got an incredible offer for our audience on Go Plus. Visit aeropress.com/legalaf. That's aeropress.com/legalaf. And use the promo code legalaf to save 20% off your order. That's aeropress.com/legalaf. And be sure to use code legalaf at checkout to save 20%. It's time to say goodbye to crappy coffee and yes to better adventures fueled by better coffee. We thank AeroPress for sponsoring our show. And when they asked the Milwaukee police chief, well, what are you going to do about it? He said, well, we're going to respect the Second Amendment, and we're able to handle this. Are you? With an outmatched and outnumbered police department? We saw what happened on Jan 6th with an only partially weaponized group of insurgents, a group of warriors, as Donald Trump calls them now. And what will happen when these two things happen? Now, I'm not saying that there should be a relocation of the First Amendment Park to this place across the river. I am not saying that at all. I'm calling attention to Wisconsin's open carry and concealed carry laws and how, which were given license and given new life by the Bruin decision 2 years ago. Now, we've done reporting here on the MeidasTouch Network about the attempts around the edges and the fringes by the Supreme Court, now led by Chief Roberts, in a new opinion that came out just yesterday, in which they said, well, maybe we went a little too far and we didn't give proper direction to the trial court about how to apply the Bruin decision. Because now everybody thinks that you got to look for an exact equivalent, word-for-word twin in the past. And if you don't find that law, then you can't make a new law now in modern times. Well, Judge Roberts said in the new decision, well, we went too far. We're not trying to trap the law in amber. It's got to be living and breathing, and it's got to appreciate the changes in modern life. We're saying you have to find the principles and expressions that undergird the law at the time. And if you can find an equivalent expression of the principles, whatever that means, then that history and tradition is what we're talking about. Not actually looking into the record books and the statute books to find, well, there's no exact match. I mean, this is so bad, the use of historical antecedents to set new law by the United States Supreme Court, that even Amy Coney Barrett said enough. There was an opinion 2 weeks ago where she took on Clarence Thomas, knowing that this decision that I just talked about on gun control was going to come out in the last day or so. And she said, I don't even know what you're doing. You're supposed to be making judge-made tests that trial courts can apply easily. You're not supposed to tell them to go become historians and look for an exact antecedent. And why is that the proper process of our judiciary history to do that? She said, what are you going to do when you hit something that had no antecedent and no historical reference? Then what? How do you regulate nuclear weapons? You say, well, there was no regulation on nuclear weapons back in 1792. You see the limits of this ability to use history and tradition on the Supreme Court, like there's some sort of overlord of history, an enforcer of history on modern life. I've said before, I was taught that the United States Constitution was a living, breathing document. It's referred to that, at least before MAGA took over. Now it's this brittle, trapped in amber, we got to take out the literal originalist text doesn't say exactly that. I got news for the Supreme Court. Literal original text of the Constitution doesn't say you can do what you've been doing. It doesn't define how the Supreme Court operates. That was from a case in the 1800s, led by Chief Judge Marshall. Go to the United States Supreme Court itself in Washington. Go look at the giant statue of John Marshall for a good reason. But he established through his case Marbury versus Madison what the Supreme Court's role would be in our co-equal branches of government. It's not in the Constitution. It has been interpreted from the penumbra of rights around it and what the Founding Fathers' intentions were. Listen, I don't want a collision of the First Amendment and the Second Amendment. But because this Supreme Court has turbocharged the Second Amendment and almost invariably always sides with the Second Amendment against all other rights and civil rights and freedom and safety and security for the rest of us, making it this supersized amendment. It's one of 10 amendments, the Bill of Rights to the Constitution. When the founders, the framers went back and said, we got to make some tweaks here. And now that we got the Constitution up and running, let's make some amendments, 4 or 5 years after the Constitution. And sure, it's numbered number 2, but there is a number 1. First of all, it wasn't set in rank order. It's not like the 8th Amendment is less important than the Second Amendment, or the 6th Amendment is less important than the First Amendment. It's not ordinal. It's not ranking. But when you supercharge and turbocharge one, it's to the expense of the others. And we're going to watch it play out in Wisconsin carefully right here on the MeidasTouch Network and on Legal AF. Now you know why we call it Legal AF. And if you don't know, join us on Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time right here on the MeidasTouch Network. And you can free subscribe. We're building this network with our bare hands, and we can only do it with your help. This is the network you've been waiting for. No outside investors. Nobody censors us, or me, especially, at all. And if you like my work, you can give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, go over to playlists and contributors under this MeidasTouch YouTube channel. You'll find my entire body of work. It's about 1,300 hot takes about like this one. And then join me Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for Legal AF, where we curate the top 4 or 5 stories at the intersection of law and politics, and we bring it to you right here without blowing smoke or sunshine. So until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting. Heary, heary, Legal AF Law Breakdown is now in session. Go beyond the headlines and get a deep dive into the important legal concepts you need to know, and we discuss every day on Legal AF. Exclusive content you won't find anywhere else, all for the price of a couple of cups of coffee. Join us at patreon.com/legalaf. That's patreon.com/legalaf.